Hello everyone on Facebook. I'm Ben Wiedemann from CNN. We are in Naples in southern Italy. It is now day 2 of phase 2. Phase 2 is the period when the country will start to reopen. Now, one thing that is important to note about Naples, the people here believe it is the place where pizza was invented, and we're outside the Antica Pizzeria di Da Michele, which yesterday opened for the first time in more than 50 days, but it only is allowed to do takeaway and delivery. They just started. It's 5 p.m. local, so there's nobody here at the moment. Italians normally eat closer to 8 p.m. 5 p.m. is normally when tourists would come. This pizzeria itself has been open for 150 years, and only now, as a result of coronavirus, did they actually close for the first time. They stayed open during a massive cholera epidemic and during the entire Second World War. And they opened, as I said, for the first time in more than 50 days. And we are told that they normally sell about 600 pizzas a day. Yesterday they sold 300, which is well below normal, but for them it's very good. Now, we were speaking with one of the co-owners of the pizzeria, who told us that they have 17 workers, but as a result of the closure they were not able to employ them, to pay them. And he made a very valid point that 17 workers means 17 families are without a living. Fortunately, the Italian state does provide unemployment benefits, but it's not just, of course, the question of those 17 workers and their families. It's the companies that sell them the tomatoes out of which tomato sauce is made. It's the companies that sell them the flour, the mozzarella, cheese. So it's a whole chain of people who are dependent upon this pizzeria, which of course is one of many. Now, elsewhere in Italy, pizzerias were allowed to stay open, but were limited to home delivery. But here in Naples, the governor of the region of Campania was so worried that as a result of the coronavirus spreading in this city, that perhaps there was a danger that the disease would spread. So he said all pizzerias had to be completely closed, and therefore this reopening is important. But now in phase 2, things are starting to reopen. We are in the old part of Naples, going up to a neighborhood called Forcella, a very working class neighborhood. And this is sort of typical of some of the neighborhoods of old Naples. What we have is sort of millions of people. This is the poorer part of Italy. Now, what's interesting is that the coronavirus outbreak has been relatively mild here compared to the northern part, the more wealthy part of the country. And in fact, the Italian government has done a study that found that about 90% of the deaths from coronavirus from mid-February till the end of March were in the northern part of the country, and just 3% of the deaths occurred here in southern Italy. So even though this area, for instance, the health system is much less developed than the north, it was spared the trouble. Anyway, here we are in Forcella, where you can see people are out and about. Shops are open. Only food shops and shops selling cleaning ware and equipment are actually open. But as you can see, people are out and about. And life isn't quite normal, as one might expect, but it is continuing, surprisingly, because I've been in Italy now for 2 months. I'm normally based in Lebanon, and this is the most people I've seen out on the street in that entire period. So anyway, now I'm going to look at some questions. Anyway, let me just explain to you, I do have my mask on, but I'm not wearing it unless I get close to somebody. Anyway, here I'm told Amy is asking, how much does this area rely on tourism? What if they don't get their typical tourism boom this year? Well, they're not going to get the boom this year. Naples is highly dependent on tourism. Southern Italy is very popular with tourists. And we're told, for instance, that on a normal day, outside the pizzeria we were just at, there would be tourists there by 5 o'clock, by 6 o'clock, and there would be people lined up outside to get a table. This year, they don't expect that to happen. So tourism in the entire country of Italy is expected to be just a tiny fraction of what it normally is. Okay, Carl is asking, will people get unemployment benefits? Yes, Italy has got a very well-developed welfare state, so people get unemployment benefits, and people also can take advantage of the free healthcare system, the national health system, which is actually one of the best in Europe, and therefore people never hesitate to go to the doctor, to go to the hospital, to get treatment, and it's not too difficult. David is asking, when will the country reopen? Well, this is phase 2. The country is starting to reopen, where you have, for instance, libraries, bookshops are now open, in addition to food stores and pharmacies and basic goods. On the 18th of May, there will be a further easing of the closure, with more stores being allowed to open, clothing stores, for instance. And by June 1st, they expect restaurants and bars to be completely open, but with limits on the number of people who will be allowed inside and the distance between those who go inside. Let me check else. Let's see. Jacqueline asks, can tourists travel to Italy? Technically they can, but there are very few flights in and out of the country at the moment. So there is hope that the tourist season will revive, but it's probably unlikely at the moment. I certainly haven't seen any tourists here in quite some time. Is Italy worried about a second wave? Is it really safe without the cure yet? It's not really safe until there is some sort of vaccine for coronavirus. There will always be the risk. Now, the numbers here are looking better. Yesterday, Monday, for the first time since the 10th of April, the number of positive cases dropped below 100,000. Italy now for several weeks has seen a steady decrease in the number of deaths and the number of positive cases, and most importantly, the number of people in the intensive care units, because that's really that critical point in this crisis, when hospitals can no longer deal with the number of cases in the intensive care units. So those numbers definitely down for quite some time. So the situation, thankfully, is improving. Meg asked, do you expect long waits for pizzeria orders? Not at the moment. We spent quite some time outside that pizzeria. You only wait about 5 minutes. That's all it takes for them to make a pizza. But we saw a steady number of orders coming in, so some people were waiting perhaps 10, 15 minutes, which in the grand scheme of things isn't too bad. Do locals practice social distancing? Let's take a look. Alessandro Gentile, my friend and long-term Rome cameraman, can give you an idea. People are social distancing, but not too much. Some people are wearing masks, but not everybody. As I said, this is a part of the country where the outbreak has been relatively mild, but the authorities are still trying to prevent people from crowding together. So, for instance, we were near the waterfront in Naples yesterday, and we did see the police were handing out fines for people who they felt were not respecting social distancing. Fines as much as €400. That's well over $400. So it's there is a cost for not respecting social distancing. How is Italy's economy? Will it recover? I'm asked. Well, the economy's in pretty bad shape. They're expecting that it will shrink by about 10% this year, and those were the earlier predictions. So it's definitely not in a good situation. But as I said, there is a very well-developed social welfare state and a public health service. So there hasn't been the sort of anger in Italy that we've seen, for instance, in the United States over the lockdown. People here, by and large, have respected the regulations. And so, yes, there haven't been any protests or anything like that. Certainly nobody would walk around with guns in the streets of Naples protesting this situation. All right, and when do schools open in Italy? They are closed for this academic year. They will reopen in theory in September if there is not a second wave, and therefore we shall wait and see. But at the moment, students are supposed to be taking their classes via the internet from their teachers. You speak to parents, it's been not successful in all instances. And testing, is Italy testing the population? Yes, the population is being tested, but the testing is being focused on those parts of the country where the outbreak is most intense. And it doesn't appear to be the case that there's an awful lot of testing going on here, but of course there don't seem to be a lot of cases, fortunately, in this part of the country as well. So I think that's all we've got for now from Naples. Naples is a city in Italy famous for its artists, its authors, its imagination. It's a city that people say, in Italian they say, vedi Napoli e poi muori. In other words, see Naples and then you die, because once you've experienced Naples, there's not much left to enjoy in life. So that's all for us. I'm Ben Wiedemann, talking to you from Naples in southern Italy. I hope you'd enjoyed this session on Facebook.